What's good, YouTube world? Killua Morales is back at it again with another top 10 list. Now, I know I'm way late to the party, but I was not gonna miss out on it. So for those who may not know, on the 2nd of July last year, a special studio celebrated their 25th anniversary by revealing a trailer of their new work currently ongoing this season. Now, there wasn't a lot of information that was revealed about this work other than its name, Metallic Rouge. The trailers looked amazing, and the first episode definitely got me invested. That's not why we're here. Today, we're taking a trip back down memory lane with its studio, and that studio is Bones. So I will be giving you all a top 10 list of what I think are their best works. Now before I go into this list, just like my top 10 Madhouse anime, which was struck down thanks to Kadakawa's bullshit, there will not be any movies on this list. So with that said, let's hop into it. Number 10. Go Sick. Now let's start things off by talking about not only one of the most underrated anime of all time, but also arguably one of the best mystery anime. Taking place 6 years after the events of World War I, we follow the point of view of a Japanese student named Kazuya Kujo transferring to an academy located in a French-speaking fictional country called Savie, which stretches from Switzerland to the Mediterranean Sea. Kazuya walks on campus only to be feared by his new classmates due to his jet black hair and dark brown eyes, leading to him being dubbed the Black Reaper, which is based off of a popular urban legend about a traveler who brings death in the spring. After essentially being forced to learn about ghost stories and urban legends, Kazuya would later come across a library where after reaching the top, he learns about another urban legend called the Golden Fairy in the High Tower. After meeting a little girl with golden blonde hair and emerald green eyes named Victoire de Blas, who never attends classes and instead spends her days reading books in the library and solving mysteries that even detectives like her flamboyant pompadour rocking brother Greville can't solve, thus beginning the adventures of two adolescents uncovering many mysteries like an episode of Scooby-Doo. So the series starts off very strong, giving us a monster of the week type story as Kazuya and Victoire travel around Savie solving different mysteries. Each mystery gets more and more grim as the story progresses, and that's how the first half starts off. But when the second half kicks in, the story then turns into one big mystery about Victoire and her family. Now, if you're familiar with big hit mysteries like Case Closed and Ace Attorney, or even lesser known series like the Kindaichi Case Files, then this series is up your alley. The crazy thing is that the mysteries aren't the front runner. It's the characters, as each character minus the teacher and Avril Bradley have their time to shine. The art and animation was so well drawn that it felt like a modern take on a classic animated series. And the music was the best part, as the classical music made each scene intense and sometimes emotional, with the opening theme setting the tone of each episode. The first ending theme was the best part of the music hands down, with its beautiful classical style and heart-pumping drums. It's just a shame that it was replaced with the okay second ending theme, but it was serviceable. In the end, this is a mystery anime that needs more attention than it already has, and I hope that Bones decide to adapt its sequel series Go Sick New Continent. Number 9. Soul Eater. Now we go from a realistic series like Go Sick to a more cartoony one instead. So I know that there are a lot of people that can't stand this adaptation of the beloved manga series, especially since the later arcs don't follow the manga. But you gotta admit that this series had an amazing startup. Just from the first 3 episodes alone, you get a clear idea of what the story is about and what the characters are like, as we see the story from the perspective of multiple characters as they attend an academy named Death Weapon Meister Academy, which is a school run by an entity named Shinigami, or as is commonly known as Death. This school is used as a training facility for humans that have the ability to transform into weapons, and the wielders of those weapons called Meisters. Even though it mainly follows the perspective of the studious and stubborn Maka Allburn and the laid-back Soul Evans, you can't really turn a blind eye to the rest of the characters, like the self-absorbed Black Star and his partner the humble Tsubaki, or even the perfectionist that is Death the Kid and his partners the twins with opposite personalities Liz and Patty Thompson. But if you ask me, the best character is Professor Stein and Blair the Witch. Hey, editor, shut the f*** up. Anyway, it's plain as day that the animation for this series takes inspiration from Western cartoons like Tim Burton's animated films. Hell, I can see a little bit of inspiration from Harry Potter, and that's always a blast to watch. Just look at Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt. What really makes this series such a blast to watch despite the anime original ending is that it's fast-paced without feeling rushed. The comedy is gut-wrenching with sound effects taken straight from old Warner Brothers, Hanna-Barbera, and Disney cartoons. Also, I love the idea of not showing character backstories, as even though it's a good way to develop characters, it can be a little overplayed nowadays. Just developing the characters through the story progression was more than enough for this series. Also, the action scenes were intense and hilarious at times because the chemistry between the characters was believable as their personalities really bounced off each other. If you can get past the fact that Bones didn't follow the manga in the later arcs, you can see that this is an anime more than worth the watch. Also, that opening theme to this day kicks so much ass. Number 8. Snow White with the red hair. Now, even though this series was very simplistic and was clearly aimed towards young girls, this was still a great watch. Following the point of view of a young, pure-hearted apothecary named Shirayuki, whose name literally translates to Snow White, you see her run away from a prince named Raj, who orders her to be his concubine only because of her red hair. Oh, I can't really blame him because I have a soft spot for redheads. Not her, damn it. Anyway, as she's running away, she encounters another prince named Zin who saves her from being poisoned by an apple gifted by Raj in an attempt to threaten her. But it backfires on him as he nearly started a war with another kingdom due to his immaturity. So after saving Zin, Shirayuki decides to live in his kingdom, thus starting her new life as a court apothecary. Just from the first episode alone, you can clearly see the inspiration from the iconic German fairy tale from the story and the characters. Thankfully, it's not a full-blown retelling of the story like what Studio Gonzo did with the beloved William Shakespeare tragedy Romeo and Juliet. If anything, it's more of a tribute to the original story. Bones is normally known for producing action-packed series, so seeing a character-driven drama series like this is quite the surprise. Most of the story is about Shirayuki wanting to prove herself as a capable apothecary. Even though it's predictable most of the time, it's the way they go about it that makes it an investment to watch. Shirayuki shows that she's not some typical damsel in distress, as even though she's never involved in a battle, she's shown to be a very independent woman that can solve her own conflicts with very little help from others, showing that you don't need to push an agenda to make a strong female character. I'm looking at you, Disney. Thankfully, she's not the sole focus of the story, as it also tells the story from others' perspectives. You see how Prince Zen comes to terms with not only his affection towards Shirayuki, but also his status as a prince. You even see his loyal servants show their affection and loyalty towards Zen as you see them put their lives on the line for him. Hell, even the immature Prince Raj gets some character development as he goes from an immature and greedy prince to a great leader with an unrequited love for Shirayuki. When you add on the fact that the art and animation looks like a modern painting drawn by Leonardo da Vinci's direct descendant, and the fact that the music is very sweet, lighthearted, and easy on the ears, this is a shoujo series I recommend everyone to watch at least once. Oh, and one more thing. F***ing hell, Saori Hayami, you've done it again, making another character sound so beautiful. Number 7. Darker Than Black. You know, if Marvel didn't partner with Madhouse to produce their respected anime series, that being X-Men, Iron Man, Wolverine, and Blade, then this original work would have been the closest thing to anime X-Men. Created by the man that gave us Wolf's Reign, it takes place in modern times where two phenomena called the Heaven's Gate and the Hell's Gate open up in South America and Japan respectively, and the people that emerged from them were labeled contractors. Why were they labeled contractors? That's because in exchange for their humanity, they gained supernatural abilities. 10 years has passed, and in Section 4 of Hell's Gate, one contractor with the code name Black Reaper has been giving the police chief of this section a lot of trouble, especially since many contractors take jobs in missions from a ruthless and mysterious organization known as the Syndicate. Not that Syndicate. This is when we meet the Black Reaper, whose real name is Hay, as he lives his life taking on these ruthless missions, while at the same time slowly peeling back the dark layers covering a nefarious plot that threatens the very lives of contractors. Now, if I can describe this series in a nutshell, it's a film noir. This kind of style was popularized by the hit 90s anime Cowboy Bebop, but instead of telling a story from multiple planets, it stays grounded on Earth. Each character, with the disappointing exception of Amber, was beautifully written, giving us very sympathetic and complex characters. The plot is so deliberate and complex that it lays several clues about many mysteries, some of which are answered while others are left unanswered. The first season could have easily ended the series at a point where the viewer can walk away satisfied. That was until 2 years later, the second season, Gemini of the Meteor, was released, answering more questions the first season didn't answer. When dealing with dark topics like the meaning of life, what it means to be human, finding oneself, and many, many more, this is an anime that knows how to thread the line between realism and idealism. Also, the second season is a lot better than some people claim it is. Number 6. Skate the Infinity. Okay, I've spoken enough about this series for my top 10 anime of 2021. Click the card in the corner to check that out. But for now, I'll try to make this as brief as I can. Now, as I've stated before, I'm not really into sports anime with a few exceptions here and there, and this series is one of those exceptions. So the plot is not the most memorable, as it just follows multiple characters living their lives normally, while on the down low, they're racing downhill on an off-road skate track, putting their lives on the line to have a good time. But that's the beauty of it, because it's about people having fun, enjoying themselves as they show who they truly are on the inside. The chemistry between the characters, including the villain, who's basically Dio Brando on a skateboard, was not only entertaining, but also very realistic. They all felt very convincing, as they're basically living double lives, so there's bound to be at least one or two characters that you'll love. Of course, the main relationship between the two main characters was the highlight of the story. Reki, who has a bigger passion for skateboarding than Tony Hawk's career, and Langa, who's lost his passion for snowboarding after the death of his father, were just the best of friends that they felt like brothers. Even the side characters have their time to shine, like Mia, the child prodigy that's always alone, Joe, the playboy that gives Reki and Langa advice, and of course Adam, the Dio Brando on a skateboard that shockingly had a very tragic past. Of course, Bones delivered with the art and animation. Despite most of the skating being completely unrealistic, they felt very intense due to the art and animation. From the camera angles to the beautiful lighting, each scene was just a sight to behold. Of course, I can't talk about the art and animation without bringing up the character designs. Not only are the designs very diverse, bringing out each of their personalities, but the most important part about them is that they brought out each of their skate styles. Reki being the straightforward hothead, Langa being the self-assured snowboarder, Cherry being the robot-like skateboarder that picks up on other skills, Joe being the musclehead that can be reckless, and Adam being, well, I've already said it enough. Overall, this is hands down one of the best sports anime to come out in recent years. And with the new OVA and second season currently in the making, I'm expecting this anime to up the ante with the characters and the skate scenes. Number 5. Noragami. Now, to be honest, out of all of the Bones anime I've seen over the years, this is the one series I legitimately feel sorry for. For those who don't know, Noragami's manga had such a huge following when it was released. Obviously, it was popular enough to get an anime adaptation. And next thing you know, the anime was so popular that a second season was announced afterwards. That's where it went downhill. You see, after the second season's release, sales for the manga dropped like a stone, and since then, you don't really see anyone talk about this anime or even the manga. That's a crazy thing because this anime is actually a blast to watch. It follows the point of view of a young boy named Yato, who is actually a deity and aspires to be worshipped by millions of people. The problem is that he doesn't have a single shrine dedicated to his name, so he spends his days doing menial jobs for 5 yen apiece. Things seem to go grim for him, but one day his luck changes as a middle school girl named Hiyori spots him standing in the middle of the road about to be hit by a truck. She saves him but is hit in the process, and surprisingly enough, she was not isekai, and miraculously, she survived the accident and gained the ability to leave her physical body whenever she wants, thus beginning the adventures of a minor deity and a young girl. Now, the biggest downfall for the anime for both seasons is that the story felt very rushed, but it had a nice blend of action, supernatural, character development, and comedy. Despite all of the dark themes including grief, it maintains a very lighthearted and heartwarming story, and each of the characters had their time to shine apart from a few here and there. Come to think of it, this was released in winter of 2014. And that was a dark moment for anime that year due to a lot of anime being released that year, either being very lackluster or just plain terrible. I'm looking at you, Pupa. When you add on the fact that the art and animation was just plain amazing, and the fact that the soundtrack hit the ball out of the park, you have an anime that looks and sounds amazing. We need another season for this underappreciated anime, no matter what the sales are for the manga. Hell, especially with the manga coming to an end this month, Noragami should not be forgotten. Number 4. My Hero Academia. Now, it would be very stupid of me to not add one of the new big 3 of anime and manga, but don't get the wrong idea. I'm not adding it to please the fans. I'm not Watch Mojo. I actually like the series for what it is. What started off as your typical shonen series, My Hero Academia decides to take it up a notch by not only giving you a very common story and character arcs, but also intense and emotional fights that leave a big impact on viewers. Izuku is arguably one of the best protagonists in recent shonen anime. What started off as a wimpy kid with no special abilities called quirks and is constantly being bullied by his peers, he earned not only his quirks, but also the respect from others through sheer grit and hard work alone. His character arc in later seasons really bring out his struggle not only against the villain, but also against himself, giving viewers a moment where the power of friendship is more convincing than anything and everything Hiro Mashima puts out. Also, when not talking about heroism, it can also be a story about redemption, as there are multiple characters who have their moments of redemption, with the most noteworthy being Bakugo and Endeavor. We even see how heroism affects not only the heroes physically and mentally, but also how it affects those indirectly involved, like Izuku's mother Inko, who is a nominee for Best Mother in anime and manga. Now, as far as the art and animation goes, Bones delivered like they were fighting for an Emmy nomination, so I'm gonna be upfront. I had no clue that Bones was responsible for this series at first. Normally for a guy like me, I can usually tell what studio produced an anime. For example, when I first watched The Misfit of Demon King Academy, I could tell that Silverlink produced it just by looking at the character designs, especially the detail in the eyes. For more complex details, when I rewatched Monster, it took me some time to realize that Madhouse produced it. In the case of My Hero Academia, I looked at the art style, the character designs, the CGI, the backgrounds, the lighting, everything. And after looking at everything, I still couldn't figure out who it was until I finished the first season and decided to look it up. And when I realized that Bones produced it, I was legitimately surprised because there was so much detail in everything that I mentioned before. The fight scenes especially were the highlight of the series, with the best ones being Izuku versus Todoroki, Izuku versus Bakugo, All Might versus Nomu, and All Might versus All for One. With the intense soundtrack and beautiful voice acting to back this up, My Hero Academia is showing why they are a part of the new big 3 of anime and manga alongside Black Clover and Demon Slayer. And with the 7th season announced just recently, will it live up to the hype? Only time will tell. Number 3. Mob Psycho 100. Again, like I said about My Hero Academia, it would be very stupid of me not to add this series to my list, especially since 1. I thoroughly enjoyed all 3 seasons, and 2. This was created by the man that gave us one of the most popular series of the past decade, One Punch Man. Now, instead of following the point of view of an overpowered character suffering from depression because there's no one who can challenge him, we have a coming-of-age story about a young boy who has powerful psychic abilities that can rival Professor Charles Xavier and Tatsumaki. This series isn't as action-packed as his heroic counterpart, but it more than makes up for it with the characters living their lives, while at the same time dealing with the paranormal. Another thing that makes this different from One Punch Man is that it's grounded to reality. when we're not getting epic fights. Shigeo Kageyama, or as he's known as Mob, is a normal teenage boy going through life while keeping his powers in control, which requires him to keep his emotions in check. This is a common practice in a lot of shonen series, so it's nothing brand new. Which begs the question, what makes this different than the rest of the cast? Well, one would say that there is no difference, and that's completely understandable. Thankfully, it doesn't bring his character down, because even though he starts off as a blank slate, Mob becomes more and more sympathetic as the story progresses. His character development is shown through the rest of the characters, including the villains, as they're pretty much the representation of what he could have been if he didn't meet Reagan. Speaking of Reagan, he is arguably the best character in the series. This guy is a complete scumbag and con artist, but he more than makes up for it with how hilarious he is. And despite showing the characteristics of a minor villain, he ironically shows that he can be a good mentor and sometimes a father figure to Mob. One is clearly a master of character writing thanks to Mob and Reagan alone, but he definitely didn't leave out the rest of the cast, from Mob's brother Ritsu to his club members, who are not only lovable characters on their own, but most importantly, they're a reflection of Shigeo's character and growth. The animation started off as bland, but Bones most likely did that on purpose to surprise the fans and viewers. When looking at the fight scenes, they were never lacking when it comes to the smooth animation and bright colors. Even outside the fight scenes, the art and animation looked phenomenal, from the exaggerated expressions and movements for the comedic moments to the more serious, smooth, and natural moments in the more intense and emotional scenes. The art style is a turnoff for some viewers due to its simplicity, and that's because it's directly based off of one's drawing ability. But I personally think that it benefited the anime. The soundtrack was another highlight of the anime. For example, Shigeo's theme during the fight scenes makes him sound like a villain, which perfectly works, as each of the villains that face him feel like villains of Jujutsu Kaisen facing Sukuna. Outside the fight scenes, the music sets the tone of each scene, especially the sad scenes, as the music reflects what is happening in each scene, elevating the emotional aspect to another level. The voice acting on both ends was just perfect, as every single voice actor gave performances that felt natural, realistic, hilarious, and emotional. Mob's voice actors were the standout performances, as Setsuo Ito, Kyle McCarley, and Jason Liebrecht all have emotional range, going from bland and neutral for the most part to more serious and aggressive when needed. Overall, if you love the intense and over-the-top action and wacky nature of One Punch Man, then you're definitely going to love Mob Psycho 100. It's very grounded to reality, where the characters are the heart of the story, and the fight scenes sit in the passenger seat. It's a comedic coming-of-age story that has intensity and emotion, giving you many highs and lows, but always keeps it 100, just like Sterling. Hey, editor, I'll tell you one more time. Shut the up. Number 2. Full Metal Alchemist. Now, before you start criticizing me, just know that I'm referring to both the original anime from 2003 and the remake from 2009. Another thing, I know that there are a lot of people going to question why this series isn't number 1, especially when it's considered the best anime to be released in the 2000s and possibly of the 21st century. But before you do that, please, just hear me out. I'm begging you. Hear me out. So it's been 20 years since we've gotten the original, and despite what people say about the ending to it, the original anime has aged fairly well. When someone asks me which version they should watch, I always tell them to watch the original first, then watch the 2009 remake Brotherhood. The reason why is because when you watch the original, you'll at least have an established lore, so that when you watch the remake, it makes it easier to watch and understand. Hell, it's why I tell people to watch the 2006 Fate Stay Night, then watch Fate Zero, and of course the 2014 Unlimited Blade Works remake. But we're not talking about the Fate franchise. Let's head back to Full Metal Alchemist. Now, over the years, there has been an endless amount of criticism for the original anime due to the fact that the ending was stated to have ruined the series for many fans. Here's the thing though, when this was released, the manga was still relatively young, and there wasn't enough material for them to adapt, which is why the mangaka Hiromu Arakawa gave Bones the green light to make their own original ending. So if anyone wants to criticize the original anime, just remember that Arakawa Sensei said it was okay. And this is why Brotherhood is so beloved, because by the time this was announced, the manga was already completed, and Arakawa Sensei trusted Bones to properly adapt her work this time, showing the trust and appreciation she had for them. Now enough of the development story, let's talk about the anime itself. This is one of the most philosophical anime of all time. Out of every single anime I've seen over the years, this one hits on many dark subject matters that you can actually learn something from it. It makes you question your morals, ideals, and even your life. It's a tale of tragedy, mystery, corruption, revenge. The list goes on. It'll make you laugh, cry, and think all at the same time. For a shonen series like this, it never hesitates to hit some mature topics like greed, immortality, resurrection. I mean, I could go all day. Now, coming from the perspective of those who've read the manga, the pacing in the beginning is a little too fast. But for newcomers, the fast pace actually works for them. So it's a fit for all viewers. The story overall is filled with many clever ideas and shocking plot twists, like one moment that gave birth to the worst father in anime and manga history. Good riddance to that selfish son of a bitch. What makes the story even better is that there is no plot hole that was left unanswered from start to finish. The characters were never forsaken in either of the series. But to be fair to those that didn't like the original, it did focus heavily on Edward and Alphonse and a few side characters like Roy Mustang. In Brotherhood, on the other hand, every single character gets not only a good amount of screen time, but also a good amount of character development. It also introduced characters that weren't in the original, including a new main antagonist and one of my personal favorites and arguably one of the most badass women in the series, Olivier Armstrong. Speaking of women, I just love how they're portrayed in this series. Some of them aren't seen on the battlefield like the beloved Winry, but they're beautifully written. And besides Winry and Olivier, the best example of this is Izumi Curtis. What makes her such an amazing character is that even though she's shown as this highly skilled alchemist and martial artist, that's not what she sees herself as. She prides herself as a housewife and never feels ashamed to say it out loud. If that doesn't teach men that they should learn how to respect women without promoting woke feminist bullshit, then I don't know what to tell you. Except don't watch Velma or any of the recent Marvel films or TV series. Or listen to this bitch. For a series that's 20 years old, the art and animation for both series have aged very well. The original was very simplistic, but it did deliver what little source material it had at the time. Then came Brotherhood, which had some big shoes to fill, as the original essentially set a high standard to follow. And thankfully, it delivered in spades, as not only was the art and animation crisp and vibrant, but the character designs were much more accurate to the manga, and the action scenes were eye-catching and breathtaking. The soundtrack is still a banger to this day, and the voice acting never fails to leave you feeling something, be it heartbreaking or heartwarming. You can feel the emotion from each character, but if you ask me, the English dub not only delivered on everything the Japanese dub gave us, but it exceeded it as well. The best performance was hands down Vic Mignogna's voicing of Edward Elric, as he gave us not only his short temper, especially when his height is involved, but also his emotional side when he comes to resolutions that are too complicated even for him to solve. He is the Mel Blanc of anime voice acting, plain and simple. There's just no competing with him. All in all, I can understand why fellow YouTuber Glass Reflection said that this is one of the 5 anime people should watch before they die. Even though Devilman gave birth to the dark fantasy genre of anime and manga, Full Metal Alchemist set the gold standard for it, as it inspired many other series, including Made in Abyss, The Rising of the Shield Hero, Mushoku Tensei, Demon Slayer, Dr. Stone, and even the overrated Attack on Titan. I'm dead serious, by the way. I stand by that opinion. Just like how I stand with Vic. Now before I give you my number 1, let's take a look at a few honorable mentions. Blood Blockade Battlefront. For an action comedy series taking place in New York, this can be pretty tragic at times. The Case of Vanitas. Bones just never fails to deliver when it comes to animating mystery series. Rasafan. one of Bones' early works that clearly takes inspiration from Neon Genesis Evangelion. Space Dandy. Shinichiro Watanabe once again shows why he's a master of storytelling with this sci-fi comedy series that clearly has a disco feel to it. Super Crooks. Never thought I'd see the day when Bones takes a crack at Western works, and they delivered especially well. Erika 7. I wanted to add this due to nostalgia alone, but there were better mech series and better love stories out there. And Ouran High School Host Club. I always enjoy a good harem series, and this reverse harem was arguably the best to be released. Number 1. Bungo Stray Dogs. Now we have arguably the gold standard for what Bones is capable of. A beautiful combination of action, comedy, drama, and mystery. It doesn't have as big of an impact as Fullmetal Alchemist, especially since this is another series that takes inspiration from it, but it did improve the formula that Fullmetal Alchemist also improved on. It follows the point of view of a young boy named Atsushi Nakajima as he's kicked out of an orphanage for a crime he didn't commit, or so he thought, as he would later meet a quirky man named Osamu Dazai, who just happened to be investigating the crime that Atsushi was blamed for, only to reveal that Atsushi was unknowingly the culprit as he turned into a white tiger and attacked Dazai. After calming his frenzy, Dazai would later explain to Atsushi that he's what's called a gifted, basically a person who has a supernatural ability. This leads to him taking Atsushi under his wing by recruiting him into his private investigation company called the Armed Detective Agency, thus beginning the wacky, thrilling, and suspenseful adventures of the Armed Detective Agency solving one case after another. The story starts off like your usual shonen series. Main characters are introduced, ambiguous story, intense fight scenes, tragic backstories, the list goes on. But one of the major points of what makes this such an amazing series is the many mysteries. And when I say mysteries, I don't mean just crimes. I'm talking about the characters and the world itself. Every single thing in this series is shrouded in mystery that you will always find yourself invested in wanting to solve these mysteries. But the biggest point that really makes this a blast to watch is the many literary references. For those who don't know, every single character introduced in this story is based off a real-life literary author, where their special abilities are based off of their respective author's most famous work. In fact, their personalities are based off of their respective author's personal life. For example, Atsushi's ability, where he turns into a white tiger, is based off the real Atsushi's famous work, The Moon Over the Mountain, which is about a former government official who quits his job in order to become a poet, only to fail and later fall into madness mentally and physically as he would go into the wild and turn into a white tiger. I definitely recommend checking out that book. It is a lot better than expected. Hell, Atsushi's personality as well calls back to how the real Atsushi had a tough life from start to finish due to his family not caring in the least bit for him. To give you another example, there's the most popular character in the series, Osamu Dazai. His special ability, which allows him to negate other abilities, is based on the real Osamu Dazai's famous novel, No Longer Human, which follows the point of view of a man who doesn't know how to show his true self to others, that he puts on a facade only for it to blow up in his face as he turns into alcoholism and drug usage. Again, another novel worth checking out. And then there's Dazai's personality, where he's always happy-go-lucky, always scheming, and never really shows what he's truly feeling. Oh, and let's not forget his obsession with wanting to commit the perfect suicide with a woman that he loves. This is based off the real Dazai, whose real name is Shuji Tsushima, by the way, where he tried to commit suicide on 5 different occasions alongside a woman he met named Tomoe Yamazaki, where they successfully committed suicide with her. Hey everybody, Killua Morales here. Now, I stopped this video to talk to you about something important. Now, even though Dazai's suicide obsession is one of the funniest running gags in the anime, one should realize that suicide is never a laughing matter. Did you know that every year 703,000 people have taken their lives, and even more have attempted suicide? Compared to today's population, this may seem like a small number, but this can have a bigger impact than one may expect. It doesn't matter what the reason is, be it mental health, grief, bullying, or one's sexuality, suicide is still suicide. And this has a longer lasting impact on those who know and love the person. There are many organizations like the World Health Organization that acknowledge suicide as a major public health problem, and they're doing everything they can to decrease that number to 0. No matter what the reason is, no one should ever feel like the only option to end their suffering is to end their lives. The bottom line is, they are all human, and they deserve happiness as much as the next person. So let's help them in their time of suffering. All it takes is for you to hold out your hand to them, and the next step is to help guide them to that path of joy. And to those who are afraid to call for help, just know this: no matter what happens, no matter how bad it seems today, life does go on, and it will be better tomorrow.
Message!
And now that I got that off my chest, let's continue the video. But the best example of this is with one of the villains named Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald, whose special ability is to gain physical strength by the amount of money he blows, which is based off the real Francis Scott Fitzgerald's most famous work, you guessed it, The Great Gatsby. His personality and actions are based off the protagonists of The Great Gatsby, as they're both arrogant to a fault, and their way of gaining money has never been confirmed, usually leading to speculations that they gained it illegally. You all get that right. The storytelling focuses on many profound themes, like child abuse, PTSD, familial bonds, the 5 stages of grief, finding a home, the nature of power, the complexities of human existence, and the interplay between light and darkness, to name a few. It explores the struggles and vulnerabilities of its characters while at the same time addressing the conflicts they face in a world that's in constant war between chaos and order. Kinda sounds like a Mortal Kombat subplot the more I think about it, but that's besides the point. Also, you gotta love how Bungo Stray Dogs balances the lighthearted comedic moments with the more gut-wrenching emotional moments, which was especially shown in the prequel episodes of each season starting with season 2, as it delves further into many characters' backstories, including Dazai, Chuya, Yukichi, and Ranpo, to name a few. This series knew how to create a roller coaster of emotions, keeping viewers fully engaged throughout the entire story. Now, despite there not being much of an overarching story, each of the arcs are so well written, and they transition from one to the next very naturally. The characters were obviously the heart of the anime, as every single character, with the exception of the homicidal hypocrite that is Akutagawa, who tries to talk like Virgil from Devil May Cry, stood out for many different reasons, like the aforementioned Atsushi, who has a long path to self-acceptance, the hilariously suicidal Dazai, who has some of the best dark comedy I've seen from anyone in anime, the candy-loving glasses-wearing Ranpo Edogawa. They should have kept Vic Mignogna as his voice actor, no disrespect to Landon McDonald, the sadistic healer Akiko Yosana, Mr. Uptight by the Book's Doppo Kunikita, the emotionless doll Kyoka Izumi, the two-faced lolicon Ogai Mori, the arrogant hothead Chuya Nakahara, the bootlicking simp Ichio Higuchi. I mean, I could go all day. One thing I can definitely say is that Atsushi and Kyoka should become a couple in the future. So here's the thing. I've got some criticism for this because Atsushi is 18 and Kyoka's 14. But here's the thing. In Japan, the age of consent before it was recently changed was as low as 13 in some prefectures. Don't ask me why, but know that this would make it okay for them to become a couple, especially when they have so much in common, as they understand each other's suffering and are willing to jump through hoops to save each other. But that's just my opinion. The comedy is arguably the weakest part of the anime, as there is not much variety since most of the humor is slapstick, and the funniest moments circle around Dazai's suicide obsession and his antics in not only the lighthearted moments, but also the emotional moments. But despite all that, they were still gut-wrenching because the chemistry between the characters were very strong, giving off family vibes than a mere private investigation company or even a criminal organization. No matter what the moment, there's always a point when you're bound to laugh. The art and animation was just beautiful. Bones did not hesitate to bring out the vibrant and gritty world to life with the visuals, the fight scenes, and the attention to detail. When looking at the simple moments like when characters are just talking to each other or when they're investigating crime scenes, every single frame feels meticulously crafted, enhancing the overall viewing experience, ensuring that you remain focused on the scene at hand. The frames and the fight scenes were especially enhanced, with the best examples being Atsushi vs. Akutagawa, Atsushi and Akutagawa vs. Francis, and Yukichi vs. Fukichi, to name a few. The Atsushi vs. Akutagawa fight was, in my honest opinion, the best fight story-wise and animation-wise. Despite it not lasting that long, it was well paced as the art and animation showed off not only their opposite personalities, but also their powers. The soundtrack especially brought out each scene, as each song complemented the atmosphere, heightening the emotions and intensifying the action. Every single opening theme was memorable and catchy, with the best ones being the 3rd season opening theme and the 1st season ending theme. But they all left a lasting impression that resonates long long after each episode ends. Of course, I can't talk about the sound department without bringing up the voice acting, as both the Japanese and English dub gave A-list performances, giving us characters that will definitely leave an impression on you. The best example of this is Dazai's voice actors Mamoru Miyano and Kaiji Tang. These two clearly understood Dazai's complex personality, and their performances were proof of that. In the end, Bungo Stray Dogs is a modern-day masterpiece. It is a shining example of enthralling storytelling, three-dimensional characters, awe-inspiring art and animation, and a narrative that constantly pushes boundaries. If you're a fan of action, mystery, and literary references, then this is the series for you. With a side story movie and the 5th season wrapping up this past summer season, this series makes you want more, especially after that conclusion. And this is why I say that Bungo Stray Dogs is the best anime to be produced by Bones. Well, that's it for this list. Do you agree with it? What was your favorite anime that was produced by Bones? Comment below to give me your thoughts. But now that that's taken care of, I can finally focus on my character analysis video. But it may take some more time, as now the new year is here, so of course my next video will have to be my top 10 picks of the best anime of 2023, so look forward to that. But for now, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, just like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to tap the bell icon so you're never missing out on a future video. But until then, thanks for watching. I'm leaving in Godspeed. Peace!